If your phone is constantly buzzing with post something reminders and you're drowning in DMs, this is your sign.
From knowing when to DIY to spotting the moment you need to call in the pros, we're breaking down how to hire the right social media help.
So this isn't about being bad at social media. It's about recognizing when your time, energy, and skill set are better spent elsewhere.
Let's call out the big warning signs. Inconsistent posting, no clear strategy, always feeling like you're playing catch up, or even worse, posting and ghosting.
Definitely. You don't want to be spending more time making content than running your business.
It feels like you're constantly starting from scratch. That can also be tiresome.
Yeah. And if you've hit the point where social media feels like a chore and it's not an opportunity for your business, then it's probably time to hire. And here's the truth. Every successful brand that you admire either has someone in-house running the show or an agency behind the curtain doing it for them. There's no way that they're doing it all by themselves.
No, it's definitely a full team effort. And if you're doing it alone, burnout isn't a possibility. It's a guarantee.
Agreed. And, as we know, social media is never done. So it's easy to get burnt out pretty quick, or it's easy to feel so, inspired by it that you go full force and then you back off because you can't keep up with that. So, we also know that business owners, they're going to prioritize profit in the immediate. They're going to spend time on, the latest deal, what's going to make them money, what's going to put, that the dollar in their pocket right away, but they're not focusing on the dollars in the future that they're missing out and growing that pipeline. And that's where social media comes into play.
And like you said, from the moment of inspiration, that's typically where the DIY part comes in, and not really strategizing, planning ahead, and then utilizing those times of inspiration to go in and plan in your calendar rather than just posting on the fly or manually.
Exactly. We can definitely spot those accounts, especially the solopreneurs where they're like, I haven't posted in a month. Let me just shove a post up today.
Or 3
because,
in one day.
Yes, because I haven't said anything.
Yeah.
And then it's not strategic. There's spelling errors. Things aren't tagged. They're missing a lot of opportunities.
It's really not also the best or highest type of content. And honestly, as an agency, we see that as well. We'll have clients be like, oh, I would love this post right now. And it's like, well, we already have your calendar set out and maybe it's not the best time. Obviously, if it's for an event or a campaign, yes. But
utilize your experts.
Post it right now.
Yes.
Yeah, trust your experts.
Definitely.
So when should you keep it in-house?
So for social media, if you want to keep it in-house or when you think you should, it's 2 different ways. So either you have a really tight budget and maybe you have an assistant or somebody on your team who's doing a bunch of things and they take that on. Doesn't mean they're an expert, but if you have a really small budget, maybe you have that person help out a bit. Or if you have a large budget and you can hire someone full-time just for social media, then that's great. Or if it's a small scale or large scale effort, whether you really need someone full-time, then you have that option. Or if it's a very hyper niche audience, we work with some niche companies, so it doesn't mean that that's, out of the play. But a lot of times in-house works best if you have more of a large budget. So on the other hand, Sophia, when should someone hire an expert or an agency?
When you want growth, strategy, or multi-platform management, we often see sometimes a lot of companies or personal brands themselves are only on one platform, Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, and they're not really showcasing and putting forth all their content on all platforms. And sometimes how strategy pulls into that is, what they're posting on Facebook, they shouldn't always be posting on Instagram, and they should be pivoting the caption. How many times have we seen a link in an Instagram caption?
Right. And not because they know it doesn't work, just because they're copying and pasting from all the platforms and not paying attention.
Exactly. They're not strategizing. And same for LinkedIn. If you're a B2C client and you're posting on LinkedIn, maybe not the best.
Right.
So,
yeah, they're not tailoring. We always talk about platform native content, and that's where that agency comes in because they can really, tailor and specialize the message. So when it comes to hiring help, there's a couple of ways to go about it. So you can have a freelancer, you can have a part-time hire, or you can have an agency. Someone like us, we're an agency. We're never going to replace, and I always say this, unless you have a full service package, we're never going to replace a full service social media team. There are some companies where their social media departments are 10 people. And in that, they have one person for just engagement, one person for just creating content, one person just for captions, one person just for distribution, one person just for, they really niche down each role. And
And
if
it
you
shows.
need that, yes. And if you need that, then that's going to be a way larger budget. An agency, I mean, you could have that if you have a full service, but most agency sweet spots, especially for us, is it's supplemental. So you're hiring an agency, and the agency is going to give you X amount of posts, X amount of engagement. They're going to run through strategy. They're going to do reporting. They're going to, manage it so it's off your hands, but they're going to manage everything that's in that deliverable in your proposal, what's included. Whatever's not included is not going to be done unless it's added on or it's paid for, but really it's black and white. This is what the agency covers. And at least the client and the brand knows they can sleep well. It's all done. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to babysit. Whereas a freelancer or a part-time hire, often with a part-time hire especially, you're paying for hours. So if you're only paying for 10 hours a week and you give them a boatload of stuff to do, they're either going to not get it done or they're going to rush through it and it's not done deliberate, and they're not really held to be accountable for results, where an agency is held accountable more for results and deliverables. So that part-time hire too is usually going to be someone not as experienced. Maybe it's someone who just wants a side job, or it's someone in college and they're just doing it hourly. So you're not going to get you're not going to get that dedicated help. So that's where that big difference comes in. A lot of times companies save money when they hire an agency like us because they're not paying someone full time. So if a full-time salary for someone, really great, it has to be in the six figures. If you're going to hire a social media manager now, like that's what it goes for. And if you can't afford that, you can still have a monthly retainer less than that and get great results.
Versus hiring somebody freelancer for half the price, but not the same bandwidth that they can take on, just experience and knowledge.
You're really just paying out sweat equity, but that's it.
Yeah.
So as we were talking about, what does a social media agency actually do?
For starters, it's definitely way more than just posting pretty pictures and scrolling on Instagram. I'll never forget, I was watching Love Island, which I know we love to talk about here.
Yes.
And one of the islanders was like, oh, a social media manager, all I do is just scroll on Instagram and, engage. And I'm like, as a social media manager, I do that for engagement, but that's not solely my job. It's not just posting pretty pictures and...
It's like a 10th of your job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's definitely a huge task and important for engagement, but it's not all that we do. It all starts with us, a solid strategy of knowing who our clients are, what their goals are, and who they want to reach, and how we can get there.
Yeah. And then what's another thing that we hear from clients often when they switch to us, whether they had an agency or a freelancer?
Recently, and we hear it all the time, is my last social media manager didn't listen, or I wasn't even getting X amount of posts that I was guaranteed, and it shows when we go back and look at their feed. I mean, it's once a week or once every 2 weeks, or maybe they missed posts, so it's like 5 posts in one day.
Yes.
Posting and ghosting, no engagement.
Yes, it's evident. And that's a big red flag. And that's why I think a lot of people feel burned from working with social media agencies. A lot of people say, I don't want to hire an agency because they all suck, or they don't do what they're supposed to.
They don't deliver.
And that's just that one experience. But I feel like it takes one bad egg to get a bad reputation across all. And I always say, as an agency owner for almost 8 years, everything is reputation. So why would I want to be that? So it's just not what we do. And having those monthly reports, that's a huge green flag, because in those monthly reports, it's summarizing how many posts, what's the engagement, all the work that goes into it. You really can't hide the behind the scenes of social media because it all comes out in the numbers anyways. So that's a big thing to look for. Like, you want to see that a company is doing monthly reporting and they are showing the deliverables. But red flags would be if they're not offering reporting, if they don't have any past clients they've worked on. You don't really want to be the first.
Stories.
Yes. Vague deliverables. If they just say, well, we'll take care of it. Take care of what? How many posts? Are you doing stories? You really want to have direct deliverables. And then if someone's able to send you a proposal right on the spot because they have those packages, more like a one size fits all, I would run, because I think every business and every budget and every person needs something different. And something that we do is I don't have a set proposal that I send to all clients. Yeah. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot more work, but you have to customize it, because is that client providing content, or do we need to work with the content agency? Does that client, require graphic designs or does it not? Are we going to run ads? What's their budget? Do they have a whole team? There's a lot of aspects that go into it. Is their engagement, 1 or 2 comments, or is their engagement 100 comments?
All night.
Yes.
During the middle of the night.
It has to go into it. It has to go into play.
Yeah. I mean, it's same for like when you get a quote from a contractor, like no 2 houses is going to be the same amount.
Exactly.
For that exact reason. It's just what the house needs or what our clients need.
Yes. Yes. And, something that we talk about is that hiring someone doesn't mean you're admitting defeat. It's really making an investment in your brand, in your company, and it's doing the right thing.
I would also say, as we're talking about, like, one thing that we see with clients who hire us who are leading a different agency is inconsistent branding.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we'll see misinformation or maybe not clear messaging versus like what the client tells us versus what's on the website versus what's on social media. It's just very all over the place. And that's another reason why they can be missing potential leads because it's just not clear.
Yes. And sometimes we even see that with like solopreneurs or business owners because they understand their company so well that they're so deep into it. They don't realize from an outside perspective, like, I don't know what you're saying, or like, that doesn't really make sense because they get it. It's their business. So even having us as that outsider, we can be like, so what does this mean?
Yeah.
Or like, let's break this down for a 7th grader. They say on social media, you really should be writing at a 7th, 8th grade level.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to isolate everybody, depending on your client, of course, and your audience. But a lot of times business owners are not putting things out clearly because they're so deep into it and they get it.
They know.
Exactly.
Know, especially even like I think a law firm is a great example.
Yes.
If they're talking in legal jargon, like no one's going to understand. They're going to lose everybody. So
yes. And they get it. They're so into
to them, that's like what they've been studying and known for 10, 15 years. But like even ourselves, that's why we ask them, like, we have them break it down for us.
Yes. So especially with our own experience at Goat Social Media, we've seen both sides of brands who hire a social media agency too soon and then brands who wait until it's too late. There sometimes is a sweet spot of knowing when to bring an agency in. It's not a bad thing to have one from the start, and it's not a bad thing to have one down the road. But sometimes if you can jump in right in that middle spot, it's just going to make all of it so much better.
Here's our checklist for knowing when it's time. Your content is inconsistent and reactive instead of planned, kind of like what we said in the beginning. You're just posting on the fly, just, when you get this burst of inspiration and then...
You might have an established platform. You might have some followers already, but that inconsistency is like, okay, now maybe I'm ready for help.
Yeah.
Like I got to where I could, but it could be better. Also, if you've outgrown your current reach and you can't break through. So if you've seen like, okay, my friends and my family, they're engaging. I have, a good amount of following, but how can I make it to the next level?
And that can be frustrating because the content is good, the brand is solid, but without a strategy, you're not going to get anywhere.
Exactly.
You're missing opportunities because you can't post fast enough.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is why we always say to have an established calendar. And if anything, we can, add when needed or push back, but you don't really need to push back. If we have an extra post of the week, that's okay.
Exactly. Because there have been clients who, maybe could have had sponsorship opportunities or could have had deals or interviews, but they couldn't keep up. Another, checklist for knowing when it's time is that social media feels like an expensive time sink, not a growth tool. So you feel like the cost is more prohibitive. You're spending all these hours and you're not getting anything back. It's probably time to let go.
You want strategy and execution, not just posting pretty pictures.
Exactly. Everyone can post, but then it's a matter of really organizing the feed. Something that we were talking about earlier with the client is this client gives us a ton of content. And if we posted the content the way they give it to us, the feed would look flooded. And then we have to look at it and say, okay, let's move it around. Let's put maybe a review in here, a service in here, then a photo from the client. So when someone's scrolling their social media, if they only get to look at the last 3 to 6 posts, you get the gist of it.
They get a good understanding.
But if we posted it the way the client's giving it to us, if you looked at the last 10 posts that they just gave us, you would have no idea what they do. So it's being strategic and not just looking at those photos like you said. And then before you sign any sort of contract, and if you're going to work with an agency, you should have a contract. A contract's going to protect you, but it's also going to protect the agency as well. You need to ask these questions. Showing examples of clients they work with. I always say when someone asks us this, every client is unique. Every client is different. So we have examples to show, plentiful, but some, might be lesser, some might be better, depending on the input they're putting in with content, but we have boatloads of work to show.
And I would say content is a two-way street, especially for niche brands. Like they have to meet us, even though they hire a social media manager, they have to meet us in the middle with providing content that
exactly
we can
or hire a great content agency or photographer. And then before signing a contract, you also should ask and know, how do they measure success? And there's different levels to an agency work as well. So we have some clients where we're measuring success, we're looking at data, we're looking at analytics. And then we have some clients that I call their maintenance. So they're on the lower end. They're not spending a lot with us a month because all they want is more of a portfolio-like strategy. They don't really want to do engagement. They don't really want to do ads. We call it maintenance. So their accounts look active. We put nice and pretty posts there, but they're not really worried about getting business there. But if someone looks them up or if someone finds them, everything looks great, looks pristine. So you have to make sure that you understand what package you're signing with, because if you're paying for a maintenance, but you're expecting, those results from a higher package, you're not going to get it. You have to really make sure it's defined in your goals before you sign a contract.
And success may look different for two different clients, just how two different clients are vastly different in terms of
exactly. So you want to discuss that
in terms of they often think this post didn't go viral, or I don't have 100K plus followers. Yes, how much does that really pertain to you, or really successful can that be for your business?
Exactly. I've worked with clients where they were like, I can't take any more business on, I'm so busy. So we're like, okay, well, we're not going to run ads, but we're just going to keep going with content. And that's amazing. What a great problem to have. Another thing you want to make sure you're asking your agency before signing some sort of contract is, how will you adapt to my industry, voice, and audience? You want to make sure that they're not using their voice on your brand. Especially I think for Goat and ourselves and the podcast, it's very me. I created it. I'm the founder. That voice is very Cassie. We don't want Cassie's voice on all of my clients. We have to make sure that we're adjusting it. We're not going to say, millennial terms and acronyms that are just not hitting.
Just not. I mean, even recently, one of our clients was like, we need to change the voice a little bit because his brand is very hyping up another friend.
Yes, and very casual.
He's very casual, not corporate at all. And obviously, especially when I'm at work, very corporate lingo. So
you want to make sure. And then the last thing I think that you need to make sure before you sign any sort of contract is asking the agency or the freelancer, what happens if we need to pivot our strategy? I know for us, a big thing that we do is we say there's a 3-month minimum on all contracts. And then from there, we can adjust. But you have to give things 90 days to gel, especially with social media, the algorithms. It does take time, but also you can't be stuck. And I even have clients that I've had, since the beginning, and we are constantly adjusting their strategy. Things are changing. And as a client, you also have to know that that's a possibility. And you can't be stuck with, well, we signed this package 4 years ago and I want it to be the same and get the same results. You have to be willing to have that ebb and flow. And the agency you're working with, they should be aware of that as well.
And it's not a bad thing. It just means that there's room for progress, or progress has already happened, and now we have to pivot and adjust to that. Great success.
Definitely.
The best hires aren't just order takers. They're partners who see the big picture and execute on it. So, for example, we get 10 photos from a client, and if we were to post them all 10 in a row, the feed would have been not how we imagined, not how it's been. So you have to, as social media agency, as running social media managers, we have to know that we're the pros, and you have to, it's not that we're not listening to you.
Yes. I do have some clients where, they don't really want our input per se, in their contract, they really want it as they want it. So then, okay, then that's going to be that. And that might be that order taker, as you mentioned. But the clients who trust us as a true partner, we're seeing great results. And I would say 95% of our clients are in that bucket of, what does Cassie think? Or what does Sophia think? And what should we be doing? Or I'm looking for your help. Or what do you recommend?
Yeah.
And that is where you see those best results. And then if you have some that are, very cut and dry, or maybe they're in an industry where they really can't get too creative, or they don't even want to. Maybe, like I said, they're so busy, they want it just as they want, and that's it. then they're going to get that. But
what
when
they
you
say
have-
will go.
Exactly.
But it's not always ideal.
No. So when you really trust the experts, that's when you see great growth. And that's the point of outsourcing. You want it to be better. You don't just want to take time off from doing it. You want to improve.
And that's where it comes giving us that 90-day period, because it's not going to happen overnight.
Definitely. So in short, if you've been juggling your social media and your business and you feel like one of them is always suffering, then it's time to think bigger.
The right hire frees up your time, grows your audience, and turns social from a stress point into a growth engine.
Definitely. And if this episode made you think, yes, I'm ready, tag us, share it, and tell us what you thought.